Hey guys, it's the Comics Kid 2099, and I am here right now doing an episode of I Stand Alone. If you've never seen one of these episodes before, basically what I do is I read a single issue of a comic book without reading anything before or after it, and I determine, does this comic book stand on its own, or do you need future issues or previous issues to really understand what's going on? And in honor of the Man of Steel coming out just a couple of days ago, by the time you see this video, I have read an issue of Superman. Actually, this is The Adventures of Superman, issue 519. In case you didn't get a good look at the cover, that's Superman fighting the mid-90s version of Brainiac. Basically, this is part of a storyline. I'm not sure how long this storyline went because I didn't read anything leading up to this. This version of Brainiac, I'll go ahead and say this right now, I don't much care for this version. Apparently, Brainiac was some sort of space entity. I don't know if he was an alien from the planet of Colu. I don't know if he was an artificial intelligence like he was circa Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm not really sure what he was, but he was from outer space, and he merged with a wizard named Milton Fine. And Milton Fine's stage name was Brainiac. And he became this kind of, he looks like if the leader in Vincent Price had a kid. That's basically what he would look like, the leader from The Incredible Hulk. And that's an okay idea for a character, actually. It's not that bad. It has potential, especially the duality. You know, he's part Milton Fine, but he's also part this space alien. I like the idea. I just wish that they had done it with a brand new character instead of rebooting Brainiac. One character from the Superman books who, I've said this before, Superman gets rebooted a lot. And one character who seems to get rebooted as often as the Superman comics do is Brainiac himself. I don't really understand what was wrong with the version of the character who comes to Earth and wants to take a city from Earth and then destroy the planet. I don't understand what's wrong with that because it's a pretty good gimmick for a character. Maybe the problem is that you see this character, he comes to Earth, and then once he does this thing once, you really can't do any more stories with that character. That might be it. There is kind of a limit on that kind of character motivation, but I would still argue that there is plenty you can do with that character without just completely rehauling him into Mr. Wizard with green skin. Regardless, I don't know what the reason was for turning Brainiac into this guy, but as I say, I'm not a huge fan of this being Brainiac. However, this is not a bad story. Basically, not having any information about what was going on before this version of Brainiac was on a planet called New Genesis. If I was a brand new comic book reader, I would have no idea what that means. Since I'm not a brand new comic book reader, I know, and you probably know, that that has to do with Jack Kirby's Fourth World comic books, which started in the 1970s and have kind of lingered on in the DC Universe ever since then. More often than not, the Fourth World is tied to Superman. And I actually really don't know what Brainiac has to do with New Genesis, why he was on New Genesis. All I know is that New Genesis is part of the Fourth World. And he has apparently created this mental illusion of Superman that everyone in the city believes is real. I don't know what this fake version of Superman did, if he was like defaming Superman's name, because the first we hear about it in this comic, Superman is kind of attacking Brainiac and he says, "You and me need to have a talk about a man that was in my tomb." Now, once again, if you were reading this comic book and you had never read a comic book before, you might be saying, why does Superman have a tomb? He's alive. And at one point later in the comics, Superman says something like, "I'm sick and tired of all of my villains trying to do the death of Superman," and it's in quotes. And once again, you might be saying, he's alive. If you are familiar with comic books from around this time, you probably know that Superman did die, and that was a pretty huge event in the 90s, not just for comic book fans, but for the entire world. I don't know why Brainiac's fake Superman was in Superman's tomb. I'm not sure what all Brainiac's fake Superman was even doing before this issue. Basically, this issue is pretty light on plot elements. All that happens is these guys kind of have a little fight, then his version of Superman comes in, then the two Supermen have a fight, then Lois determines which one is the real Superman, and then Brainiac, I guess he turns himself back into the unimposing, unthreatening Milton Fine. He still looks like the leader with Vincent Price's mustache, but he is acting like the very non-threatening Milton Fine. And then Maggie Sawyer arrests him, and then it's the end of the day. We do get this one page at the very end. I actually have no idea what's going on here. Basically, this woman at Star Labs, she's talking about how she's got all of this information on Superman, and in theory it's to be used to help Superman in case he ever gets sick or he's having trouble with his powers. But this other person she's talking to is saying, well, and also if he ever decides to go rogue, right? And they're like, yeah, that's something we've considered. I'm assuming this will be set up later, where these protocols that can be used against Superman will probably fall into the wrong hands, and Superman will have to deal with that. It doesn't really have any bearing on this comic book, though. Does this comic stand alone? I would say about 80% of it does. All the stuff that's happening here, Superman fighting the fake Superman, Superman talking to Brainiac, all of that stands pretty well on its own. The references to past stories and things outside of this comic is what might make it a little confusing for somebody who doesn't read comics on a regular basis. People reading this for the first time, they wouldn't know anything about New Genesis, about the death of Superman. They might not even understand how this goofy wizard in a cape has made the name Brainiac a thing to be feared across the galaxy. That's something he says in this comic. He says he has made that name something to be feared. And I'm thinking, well, how? Are you located just on this planet, just doing bad things on Earth, or are you all over the place? I know he says he was on New Genesis, but it kind of seems like he was trapped on New Genesis and that he wasn't there doing stuff. So I don't know if this version of Brainiac is a intergalactic villain like previous versions was, or if he is more of a grounded Earth-based villain. I would like to know that. If you have just seen the Man of Steel movie, this is a little bit of a spoiler for the Man of Steel movie. Let me reiterate, I am about to sort of spoil the Man of Steel movie, so if you have not seen the Man of Steel, as long as my thumb is up, I am spoiling that movie. So you just mute the video. Once my thumb goes down, you can unmute and I will be done talking spoilers. Ready? Here we go. Okay, so as you know, in the Man of Steel movie, Lois finds out that Clark is Superman. She finds that out very early in the movie, and that is something, as I said in my review of that movie a couple of days ago, that shocked me quite a bit when I was watching that movie. Here, Lois knows who Clark is, but it happened quite a while before this, before the death of Superman. I don't, right off the top of my head, know when this issue is from, but she and Clark already know, she knows his secrets, and she's in a relationship with him. I don't know if they are married at this point, but they are in a relationship. At least they're boyfriend-girlfriend. So, if you just came from the Man of Steel movie and you're wondering, well, what should I read? A lot of the comics from the 1990s had that dichotomy where Lois knows Clark's secret, and so she's trying to help him take care of his secret identities. You know, two people shouldering a secret is a whole lot easier than one person shouldering it. So, that is something that kind of indirectly is a little bit similar to the Man of Steel movie. I'm done talking spoilers now. So like I said, this comic is about 80% of it stands well on its own. There's just a few random references to things that even I didn't get, and I read a lot of comic books. So if you had never read a comic book before and you see this like at your comic book shop in the back issues and you think, well, that looks cool, Superman's fighting the Hulk with clothes on or something, then you might be like, okay, I'm going to pick that up. For the most part, I think it would make a lot of sense to you. So, that is all that I have for this episode of I Stand Alone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope if you did that you will like, share, comment, and subscribe. Do all of those things that you love doing on YouTube videos. I will see you guys tomorrow with a different kind of video, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. See you then.